Hi, this is Shane Bishop with the EWWW Image Optimizer, and today I want to talk to you about, well, not that plugin, but actually our SWIS Performance plugin and some changes we've made related to server-based caching recently. So, page caching in general takes the HTML that is produced by WordPress and saves it for future use so that subsequent page loads are much faster. And here we can see a pretty quick page load, 142 milliseconds. If we were to purge that cache, and this is on a horribly underpowered server, so you're going to see kind of the worst that it could possibly be. Oh, that's not the worst this server has ever done. That's still not great though, 2.47 seconds. And of course, if we reload the page, we will see that it has been cached and now loads in 147 milliseconds. And if we click on this here, we can actually view the response headers and see this X cache header that says hit. That means it hit the cache and was able to deliver a file from the cache. If SWIS is just doing page caching, you will see a cache engine header here that says SWIS cache. So server-based caching is typically faster because it doesn't have to do anything with PHP at all. It's not a ton faster than SWIS. In my testing, it's about a 2 millisecond difference. But if your server is horribly underpowered like this one, or is getting a lot of load, you can see a difference between plugin-based caching and server-based caching, in part because there is a limit to the number of PHP workers typically on any given site, and so if those PHP servers are all PHP workers, that is, are all busy, then it can still cause a little bit of slowness with plugin-based options. There are several different solutions for server-based page caching, and two of them that we just added direct support into SWIS for are LiteSpeed server caching and Varnish caching. We'll get to that in a second. But there are some reasons that you might actually use both together. And a good example of this is on Cloudways hosting with their Breeze plugin. It actually does plugin-based caching on top of the server-based caching. Why in the world would it do that? Well, there are a few reasons. One of them is in case the server caching gets cleared or whatever, you still have the disk-based cache generated by the plugin, and that might happen, if there's a service restart or a whole server restart. The disk-based cache is still there, and the plugin can then basically prime the cache for the server-based cache, and then it'll be super fast from there on out. It can also happen if your server cache expiration is not very long and you want it to be longer. Most sites can tolerate, a 24-hour or even longer, a week or a month page cache, because most page caching solutions will automatically clear the cache when something gets updated. So you update a post, you update a plugin, you update WordPress, and the cache automatically gets cleared. So you don't have to worry about a long expiration time, because when you change something, the cache automatically goes away and refreshes. But some server caching just doesn't have a long expiration for whatever reason, and that leads me to thing 3. Some servers, notably WP Engine at this time, tie the cache control or the server caching to the cache control header, and that tells the browser to cache that page and hold on to it for however long you set it to. So in this case, the default is 10 minutes, and they do that on purpose because you don't want browsers caching pages for very long. If you make a change, you want them to get the changes, right? The unfortunate side effect here is that the server also only holds on to that cache for 10 minutes. So maybe we thought, well, let's change it to an hour, let's change it to 24 hours, because that's silly to do 10 minutes. Well, then browsers also are going to hold on to that, so it's kind of a catch-22, and we have a problem. Well, we can use SWIS to provide plugin-based caching to supplement the server cache, and then we can set it to however long we want without having to worry about browsers holding onto pages longer than they ought to. And we actually do this on our own site. The other reason relates to cookies and query strings. A server cache might miss if a query string is there at all, or if it's different than the query string that was used somewhere else. For example, with marketing and tracking parameters that are often used for different campaigns and email newsletters, analytics, all that sort of thing. We'll use query parameters, and then that messes up your server caching. SWIS and other caching plugins do not have that issue because they can recognize those query parameters that don't need a different cache response, and they can deliver a cache page anyway. So those are a few reasons we might use the two together, and like I said, we do that. Most Cloudways sites are set up that way. And so then that takes us back to SWIS integrating with server-based caches. So we just added support for Varnish caching, specifically on Cloudways, because most of the other Varnish caches that I tested already have their own auto purging mechanism, and so you can use SWIS with them just fine, and the web host takes care of the purging on their end. That applies with WP Engine, Kinsta, Flywheel, Pagely, lots of other web hosts that have their own server caching will automatically do the purging for you. Cloudways, though, uses their Breeze plugin, which has a whole lot of other things, and so you can use SWIS now in place of Breeze, and it will integrate directly with the Varnish cache at Cloudways. If you would like to use SWIS with some other Varnish setup, we've added a bunch of filters, and we have a drop-in plugin that you can use to support that as well, and I'll drop a link in the description for that. And then the other server-based cache that is very common is LiteSpeed. It's one of the three main web servers on the market right now, and it has server-based caching built in. So if you're using LiteSpeed, you likely can take advantage of server-based caching, and you may already be if you have the LS Cache plugin enabled and installed on your site. SWIS can now integrate directly with the LiteSpeed server cache, which eliminates the need for the LS Cache plugin. So you can completely remove that and just use SWIS, and it will keep the plugin-based cache and the server-based cache in sync, and make sure to auto purge the LiteSpeed cache anytime there are updates to your site. So now you can use SWIS with pretty much any server cache out there. If you find one that doesn't seem to be working well with SWIS, let us know and we'll take a look. And as always, happy optimizing.